Kia ora, I'm Ian Harvey, founder of Collective Intelligence, and this is Stuff That Matters Now. Now my hoki mai. This morning I get to talk to Lisa Markwick, who has been a facilitator with us for some years, has got a really interesting background in clinical psychology, and then moving into social impact area. And there's a lot I don't know about Lisa's journey, and so I'm interested to dig into that. I know she's huge into everything from Ironman through to making cheese and everything in between. So I'm really interested to delve into this. Love Lisa's work and her deep knowledge of human behaviour. So come on with me on this journey of discovery into what makes Lisa Markwick tick. Enjoy. Welcome back, everybody. I am interviewing this morning Lisa Markwick. Good morning, Lisa.
Good morning, Harv.
And Lisa and I have just been having a conversation before we start about how do we introduce Lisa, because she's got this broad range of skills and unusual skills. But Lisa is one of our fabulous facilitators, and she's travelling through on her way to facilitate one of our teams, and it was a great opportunity to sit down with Lisa and get this done. It's been a wee while coming. So Lisa, how do you describe you? How do you describe you? Who are you?
You first asked me to describe who I was professionally, because we practiced that bit.
We did. Okay, so let's do that professionally.
Yeah.
Describe who you are professionally.
Yeah. So I heard myself called by someone else a development consultant recently, and that kind of works. I'm a development consultant that works with organisations and systems and leaders who are looking to find a way of being different for the, I don't know, 22nd century maybe, because what we're doing now is not really working.
Okay, that's a big subject. And you trained as a clinical psychologist?
Oh yeah, I'm also a clinical psychologist, hopefully heavily in disguise. I been a clinical psychologist since the early 90s, and then I kind of morphed my way out of that after about 15 years and into whatever it is I do now.
Why? What drew you to clinical psychology?
At the time, I totally wouldn't have been able to say, probably because my boyfriend at the time thought I would make a good one. But actually, now I'm looking back on it, I think I just had a lot of my own work to do, and I like to be efficient. So I could do my own work, my own kind of therapeutic stuff for myself, as well as apply that work that I was learning to other people.
And how did you actually use it, Lisa? How do you... is that in counselling? How does a clinical psychologist practice?
Well, that's a really interesting question, because these days I would say clinical psychologists are really well set up to do leadership coaching, leadership development. But actually most, or have a leadership role in an organisation, most clinical psychologists work in the health system or in private practice, both of which I did, in community mental health teams and independently, working with people who are struggling. Some of them would have a diagnosis of a mental health disorder, and many of them would not. They would be just, miserable, sad, relationship problems, anxiety, or just life's not quite going how they imagined life could be.
That's a big responsibility. I was just thinking about dealing with people in that space. Did it feel heavy at times?
That's probably why I exited eventually, because actually several reasons. One, because it does get really heavy. I remember one day in particular, I can picture me in my office And I just wanted to say to the person, what were you thinking? And, shut up with your crying. And, clearly once I've got to that point, it's that's not the way a clinical psychologist can behave.
Yep.
So that was the heaviness, just got too heavy.
Yep.
But also, to be honest, I am all about impact, and I recognised that I was having amazing impact one-on-one with the people that came to me, but the ripple effect wasn't, I couldn't see it maybe, or it wasn't happening, certainly wasn't happening enough so that I could see it and I could experience it and I could kind of feel good about the impact I was making.
And so then what happened?
And so then I created bigger and bigger circles around myself, probably. So then I worked more, still one-on-one at that stage, with more people in business, people in organisations, and then people in business and organisations and their teams. And then I expanded further and did work I completely adored, actually, in kind of community development, community leadership development, up in the Kaipara, actually, to start with, in New Zealand. Which,
Interesting place.
yeah. I love community. I love being in community. I believe in the power of community. I believe in the power of collective. So that just, and I love Northland, so that just brought everything together for me.
And Lisa, you're also a athlete.
Yeah, thanks, Huff. I am kind of an athlete. I do.
Well, if you're not an athlete, then I'm not sure who is.
I do long distance crazy stuff. I do long distance trail running. I used to do Ironman. I love being fit and healthy, but actually I love the people I do this stuff with. Again, it's community, it's the tribe, it's the connection with the people, and in my case, generally the forest and the ocean beaches I get to run through and be with. And yeah, sometimes it's as much stopping and standing in awe at the bottom of a tree. Old lady trees, they all tend to be for some strange reason. Just connecting to the ground and the earth and realising how much of a conduit I am, like those old lady trees.
Lisa, and I couldn't think of anything worse than running or doing an Ironman.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you do it?
Why?
Yeah.
I like to be on the edge. I like to see what I can do. I like to test. I like to test other people's boundaries, actually, but I like to test my own. And actually, the long distance, it's not just long. I would hate doing long distance on a road. It's actually being in the forest all that time. And generally, it's the balance of doing that with other people, and the challenge of sometimes the person I'm with is way ahead of me and has to slow down, and sometimes it's the other way around. It's just the companionship. And at other times it's the solitude, being out in the forest on my own. I never have my headphones on. I hear my footsteps. I hear the birds. I sense the animals and the birds that see me, that I don't see. So I feel seen, and I feel heard, and I see and hear.
Fascinating.
Fascinating.
It's
kind of nothing about being an athlete. It's
fascinating.
Not that.
I just want to ask a couple more questions about the Ironman before we go back on track as to what we're supposed to be talking about. Competing in an Ironman is 3 different things, right? So you start with the swim, which is how long?
4 kilometres, 3.8 to be precise.
Then you've got a bike.
180 kilometres.
And then you run...
a marathon. 42 kilometres. 42.2. Yeah, I know.
And at which point, what's the hardest part of all of that? Because all of it's hard, but what's the hardest part of all of that?
2 things. One is the last 10 Ks of the run. And the other is just holding your shit together for that amount of time. And that's what I like about it. That's the test. I like the hardest part is being strategic, not blasting out and using all your energy. It's the science behind the nutrition. It's taking on enough water. It's a science and an art. It's strategic. It's bloody hard work.
And so this strategic stuff, so you've got a plan beforehand, you've got a plan with the training.
Yep.
And have you ever not completed an Ironman?
I've never not finished. Yeah, no, I've actually never not finished. No. Yeah. And I discovered I am fairly competitive, so I only enter when I know I can do enough training to enjoy it.
Right.
Which means I'm likely to finish.
Right.
Yep.
So it's not just it's about going out there and doing well in the Ironman.
Yeah, I don't like being an also ran.
Is that something that's always been with you?
Yeah.
Right. So at school, long distance running, that was
Oh,
the
no, I
thing?
meant the also ran
Right.
as an expression. No, as a kid, I used to do shorter distance sprinting, running. But I was also always a bit dorky and a bit ran sideways, trying to see who was behind me, and my legs kind of flicked out to the side, and I was never, I would never have been described as an athlete.
Right. Right. And so this just developed later on. This.
Yeah, it probably developed just from being, I love to just get outside. So I've always kind of gone out and done running and walking and stuff like that. And then cycle touring through Europe for about 3.5 months. Got quite good at cycling. Realised I was quite good at cycling. Actually, that was another kind of breakthrough. I'm a pretty crap swimmer, but you have to swim to do Ironman. So, and I love being in the sea, and I'm very confident in the water. So that was just a matter of learning some technique. Yeah.
Fascinating. I just, it's the most I've ever run is 16 kilometres, and I did that cold. I hadn't done any training. It was running around the mountain, Mount Ruapehu.
I mean, that's extraordinary.
And everybody knew I hated running, and those in a relay teams, they didn't tell me we were running 16 kilometres. I only found out 2 days beforehand.
It's still a hell of a long way.
Well, they gave me a nice easy patch, but it was just disgusting. I don't like it. I've never liked it, unfortunately. I liked sport, but I didn't like getting fit. So that's a problem.
I think that's where I'm very lucky. I love the process of getting fit. I actually love the training. I actually trained with a group of people who were specifically training for Ironman for about 4 years, and never raced because I'm not really interested in the race, to be honest. And then I decided to, because I'd done all the training, and then sort of sadly I did really well. So that reminded me that I am actually competitive.
Right.
Yeah. So then I had to do more.
Right. Okay, back on track.
Yeah.
So you left clinical psychology and you moved into this other world of leadership development, and you've done work with quite a range of people in the social enterprise space.
Yeah, I have. Yeah.
And what's your attraction to that space?
Impact, big systems change. An expression I learnt years ago is, in this field you can manage the problem or you can change the system. And I'm not interested in managing a problem. Like, I'm not interested in a short-term Band-Aid approach that makes people feel better, but often perpetuates a system. But I am interested in the impact that happens when you address the real complexities of a system and help people to work together to find solutions for that.
So the word complexities just come up, right? And complexity is a fascinating thing. And we had a bit of a chat about that last night, and the frustration I have, and I think you have it, when people oversimplify or simplify something that's just not. You can't do that. Well, and we hear it all the time. People criticising politicians or criticising, going, oh, they should do just such and such, or get tough on crime, or do this or do that. And none of these things are that simple because of the system.
Well, none of the things, there are some things that are simple, like, if there is actually a correct way to do something, I'm completely on for doing that. There's probably a correct way to fix my bike, for example, if my bike breaks down. But when the issue is almost impossible to define, when the situation changes all the time, when there's people involved, there's never one right answer. And so speaking as though there is, I think creates more problems. It makes people feel like, well, surely there is an answer and I don't have it and I'm still fucked. So there must be something wrong with me. I must be broken. And I'm saying that in the first person, but like when you can imagine when clusters of people who are experiencing a problem, who are told that there's one solution to it, and who don't get better, for example, it breaks the system down even more. And I find that just really upsetting.
I was going to say that would be really disheartening. Going, it's working for everybody else, but not me. Right? Yeah. Okay. That makes sense.
So sometimes there are some solutions that look kind of simple, like, for example, in the field of poverty, there's so many different things to address, but one of the issues that most people say is kind of at the core is if a person doesn't have a home, if a person doesn't have a base, they don't have any physical grounding, let alone any emotional or mental grounding, actually providing people with a home has a huge ripple effect. So that might sound like a simple solution, but it's a practical solution that people have come across by talking to people who have a multitude of other issues. You can't just say, I'll only give you a home, for example, when you dry out. It's like, well, actually, I'm not going to dry out, i.e. stop drinking or drugging, until, while I'm sleeping on the streets, because why would I stop taking this drug, which for the moment makes me feel awesome, when life sucks? So there's multiple ways for different situations, and kind of finding a number of solutions that work, and doing that with the people involved, I think is really crucial. And not pretending that there's one way ahead.
Lisa, you've facilitated with us for, I'm not even sure how long.
Look, I think it's about 8 years.
Yeah.
Crazy.
And what's drawn you to this work with us, Lisa?
Well, I think it's that. I think that CQ doesn't come in saying, we have a solution for you. But what it does say is that we can create, we do have actually some expertise in creating the context where people can be together in ways that allow them to really dig deeply, to notice themselves differently, to be in relationship with other people in a more real and kind of multiple perspective kind of way, and actually get shit done. I've heard sometimes you say, Harv, the groups are more about kind of how we be rather than what we do. I, as a facilitator, that's not the way I see it. I see that as we work with people so that they have a clearer idea about who they're being. Yep, that's kind of a foundational thing. The only reason, well, not the only reason, but the what we also do is go, well, now you've found this way of being in inquiry and in a curious place, and and reflect and see yourself from multiple perspectives, it's like when you get to that point, you can't help but put yourself into action, because you also see the interconnectedness between yourself and other people. And the minute you see or experience that interconnectedness, you can't remain blind to the possible actions or possible ways of shifting the things that you end up seeing.
Mm.
And I think that that's what CQ does. People come in with, well, generally they're doing awesome stuff actually, but often they are a bit stuck or a bit stale, and they meet these other amazing people who are very different from them, and they realise that there isn't one solution to most important things. And they get that opportunity to find a different level of wisdom and to grow their own maturity, I suppose, and their capacity to tolerate uncertainty, because to do anything worthwhile, you're going to be uncertain. You actually can't do things worthwhile following a recipe. So you never actually know how it's going to work. And that takes a certain level of, a really significant level of self-awareness and relational awareness, and an ability to see a whole system.
Mm. You know, I was just reflecting, one of the reasons I like working with you is you disagree with me.
Yeah.
You know, and
Sometimes.
no, sometimes. But the point is, I feel a lot more secure with people who will disagree with me, because it challenges my view, and it gives me, it's really interesting. And I've realised that's a really important part for that. And also, I trust people more who disagree with me than agree with me all the time, in that I know they're going to tell me what they think. And so, it gives me, it's interesting. And you're very good at disagreeing with me. You do it in a very kind, soft way, but a very firm way.
That's the thing. I can't be bothered disagreeing with people who I don't connect with, or who I don't believe in what they're doing, or it's like there's a lot of energy that goes into disagreeing, actually. And I feel much more comfortable doing that if I know I'm already in relationship, and I will stay in relationship. And that relationship is the thing which I will be much more dogged about, rather than the disagreement. And the disagreement is just to trigger new thinking.
Yeah. I mean, we had a great conversation last night around Web3 and DAOs and so forth, and you challenged me on that. And that's changed my thinking. You know, I'm going, oh, okay, I didn't see it that way, and the details aren't important at this point, but I'm going, immediately something shifted inside me, and I went, oh, okay, I've got a different sounding board here, and I'm going, you know, and then I think, do I need to adjust this? And most of the time I do. Sometimes I go, no, I think I'm okay holding this line. But last night my line shifted, and going, yeah, okay, I need to start reframing some stuff here. Yeah, but it's amazing how that and feedback that came up in a conversation last week as well. They're different things, but I think feedback is so incredibly important. And the thing that I've learnt with you is that you are phenomenal at taking feedback, and it means that from there growth happens, you know, and new possibilities emerge, you know, and sometimes that's really hard to hear. Yeah. But I love that relationship that we have, that we can do that. Yeah.
And that's, you know, that's one of the things about, I'm quite sure, you know, let's say 10 years ago, I would not have been as willing to either accept or give feedback. But there's something now about, I just think, it's all part of the mix. And if I'm going to grow up at some stage, which hopefully I'm not, but if I'm going to mature into being kind of the activist in the world that I see myself as, then it's really important that I see feedback just as another part of, the system offering its wisdom to me.
So, as an activist,
Yeah.
what do you want to activate? What's the thing you want to activate?
Yeah, that's been a lifelong question, to be honest. And what I think it is increasing the awareness and the attentiveness of human beings to whatever is possible. So I've always wondered, should I be a greenie? Should I be an activist around environment? Should I be an activist around animal rights? Should I be an activist around health and well-being? Because I'm fascinated and active in my own life in those things. But actually, when it comes down to it, there's something about how do I help people be so connected with themselves, with the earth, with possibilities, with other people, with the bigger system, that they can't help but feel the truth of the impact that's possible and the truth of the, I say responsibility, but I say it really lightly. I don't feel the responsibility in a heavy way to make a difference, but in a kind of light, kind of slightly humorous way, really. Somehow there's something about being, the more connected and grounded I get, the easier it is to be light about the work in the world somehow.
What a great answer. That was a lovely answer. How do we get people... And this is a selfish question. I'll frame it up as this is a selfish question in that we're about to launch our Collective Intelligence Village at the beginning of next year. And the interconnectedness, I've done lots of facilitation behind the scenes, and we're starting to measure those interactions now. And at the moment, we're averaging 3 interconnections a week. These are on projects and different things that are happening that we're facilitating. How do we get people into their imagination of what is possible when we can truly interconnect and with each other? How do we trigger that imagination?
I'm going to think out loud because, again, I don't think there's one answer.
I've just thought out loud there.
Yeah. So the 2 words that come to my mind that we could play with is hospitality and invitation. So if you think about, so by hospitality, I mean, how do we create a hospitable place? How do we create a context where people feel invited and they feel at home, and where hospitality can also mean, how do I host my own feelings? How do I welcome when I feel sad as well as when I feel joy? How do I welcome when I meet with someone in the CQ context and somehow I don't immediately gel with them? How do I stay in relationship with that? So there's something about, rather than first going to the creativity, kind of first go to, with those people, how we gather together in a way that feels homey and welcoming. And a phrase I heard recently was, how do we offer unhesitating friendliness? And I don't just mean kind of chumminess. I mean, how do we unhesitatingly, unconditionally welcome whatever is there, acknowledging all of it and accepting the unattractive as well as the attractive, accepting the stuff we like as well as the we don't like as well as the stuff we like, because that's hospitality. So how do we set that up? And then how do we, what are the questions that are inviting enough for people to drop their daily grind? Because really when you're in a daily grind, your brain is only functioning in a certain part of it. So we need to trigger the other frontal cortex and other parts, the amygdala, that give us a sense of whole systems that tune into our emotional capacity, because those are the things that are required to be creative. So I think it's setting up all those contexts. And there's some things that people can, sometimes when I start a meeting, I always start with, even on Zoom actually, I always start with some kind of grounding, breathing or moving or some kind of practice that triggers the side of our nervous system that can deal with connectedness and that can deal with creativity and that can deal with complexity and strategy. You can't just dive in and start that.
Which we've been trained to do forever.
Yeah. Because the very things that, like making a demand to be creative or facing, the bizarreness of some of the system breakdown, the minute you even talk about that, there's a paradox that happens. So our body wants to protect itself and our brain wants to protect itself. So it gets slightly smaller and slightly a whole lot more restricted. Things happen in our nervous system which stops our brain functioning. But what if we could, as CQ, what if all CQ members in the country knew that they needed to switch on their own complexity genius, and that they had some practices to do that, and then they let themselves loose across the country? It'd be extraordinary. I don't know what they would create, but it would be creative, strategic, systems orientated, impactful, and it would come from a place of grounding.
So I've just started doing that this year with Sarah Tucker. Got me onto a great coach, and I wanted to use somebody not in our system so I could reach outside. And he's got me into this lovely practice I do every morning, and it's breathing, and it's just. And he said, "What's the time of day that you will remember to do this?" And I went, breakfast. I just, And he went, okay. And it's a practice that takes me 60 seconds.
Yeah.
And the difference it's made in me, Lisa, is phenomenal because I don't get as triggered. I think I'm more creative. I still get rattled when I get depleted, but I recover a whole lot more. Yeah.
Yeah. So those are the very things. It's like, I am going to go back to the Ironman piece. So there's some ways in which you can prepare for Ironman. There's some ways in which every day you can prepare for whatever faces you by having a regular meditation practice or a regular breathing practice or getting some exercise or, there's a bunch of different ways of kind of becoming both grounded and uplifted and clear. And then in the moment, what if we had some ways of being and we practiced that muscle where we more quickly move from inquiry into action and action back into inquiry. So we more quickly get super curious but not paralyzed away from action. And then we can try some stuff and then inquire around it. And that can happen in a conversation in seconds. It's an action that we're talking as well as it's an action that I do something extraordinary in the world. So thinking about how in every moment we can enjoy that level of attention and attitude that you're tuning into in 60 seconds, having a breathing practice over breakfast. It's very possible.
And Lisa, I look at the effect of our practice with collective intelligence and the teams coming together and looking at how refreshed people can come out of a meeting, of actually stopping and focusing on themselves, for a day and a half, and actually just stopping and being with people focused on each other. And you see the miracle that happens when that comes together. You know, it's quite interesting, but and I've said this before on this podcast, my frustration with New Zealand language sometimes is people say, "Oh, are you busy?" as a greeting. Are you busy? And I love saying I work too fucking hard to be busy because I don't want to be busy, because I know when I'm busy I'm not being effective, and my coordination goes, and you know, I forget what the hell is actually important. Yeah, but it's this mantra that if you're busy, then that's a good thing.
I'm well over that.
Yeah, but you hear it a lot. You know, you hear it a lot. Are you busy? Like it's this badge of honour. Yeah, I'm really busy. And
It's very old school. It's very 80s.
Yeah, but it's still here.
Yeah.
It's still here.
Hey, I want to go back to something you said because it's still in my mind.
Cool.
You said in the groups, you know, how amazingly refreshed people are when they've come away from a CQ group and they've had some time to focus on themselves. I'm going to agree and disagree. So I totally agree that having time to just look at ourselves, create the space to be with ourselves is super important. And I actually wonder, though, whether the refreshing part is that people have practiced in a very genuine way, kind of living in that space between us. They've practiced in a very genuine way, being interconnected. Because that's what changes the world. And that's what, you know, I think it's revolutionary when people get to feel what it's like to be interconnected. And if they take that knowing into the world, then whatever they do will already be different. And they'll feel refreshed.
It's sort of on the same subject, and it's not something that I have deep knowledge of, but it's something I'm really interested in this year, and that is the term mana. And I heard a wonderful description from an elder when I was involved, Māori elder, when I was involved with the Edmund Hillary Fellowship, and he talked about, you know, the mana increases the more interconnected you are, and the more mana you have, the more clarity you have. And I went, "Ooh, that's interesting." And yeah, it's something I want to explore more, because I also know our process is mana enhancing, that interconnectedness. And I'm really interested to learn more about that and to be more conscious of that. Yeah. Because we know when it's not there.
Yeah.
And we know when we've got a transaction happening.
Yeah.
And I think I'm taking more responsibility of myself more often now, of what impact I have on other people. For years, I didn't even think about that, Lisa. It was just all about me. Have a good day, bad day, that was it. But now taking more care and about my impact on other people.
Yeah, I like that concept of mana and mana enhancement being a part of what CQ is about. And just playing with the word. I mean, I don't think you can have mana individually. It's something that exists in the relationship between. So that's kind of one thing. The other thing that comes to mind is that some people will translate mana and use the word power. And I get that, and that power, there's so many different ways of having power and being with power and expressing power, but it's a particular, very nuanced way of being with power in oneself, so that the people we're with are kind of magnetized, and they also, their mana also enhances. It's an infinite thing, not a finite thing. So it's ultimately shareable, like love is. You know, you get energized by love. The more you have it, it doesn't tire you out. It energizes you, same as mana. And there's something about, the other word that comes to mind is, it's something about gravitas. It's like there's something grounding and uplifting about mana and how we sit with that.
And I grew up thinking mana was all about status, and you know, associated that, and people say this person's got great mana, and I would think, oh, they've got status. It's about status, right? So that was my Western thinking of what mana is, and that might still be. And look, I'm out of line here because I this is not my culture, but I think there is a huge amount to learn about this term mana, and it is about being interconnected. And it was Peter Butler, one of our very sage members, Māori artist, and you know, introduced me to the fact that mana is increased the more connected we are, the more mana we have. And then hearing from this elder in Wellington, the more mana we have, the more clarity we have. And it's like, that makes sense. And I think we see that within the collective intelligence teams, is that the clarity that comes with that connection and cutting through complexity. And in the words of Peter Roband, talks about the differentness of my team helps me cut through, make sense of complexity, so I can take action with wisdom.
Yeah.
And I think that's just a beautiful definition.
Yeah.
Because taking action is one thing, but taking it with wisdom is a whole different gig. Doesn't mean it's perfect, but yeah.
Yeah.
Lisa, what would you like to? What else would you like to cover this morning? And Lisa's going, don't know it this way. And we can pause if you'd like. Yeah? Nodding to pause and think.
Yeah. What else would I like to cover? I'm actually more interested in you being bold enough to ask me what's interesting to you, because I live with myself every day, and so it's hard to see the water you're swimming in. It's hard for me to see the water I'm swimming in. It's hard for me to see the bits and pieces that would be interesting to draw out.
Okay, we're going to take 5, and I'm going to ponder that. Right, so I've had a wee think, we've had a wee discussion, and here's the thing that I'm interested in drawing out, Lisa. There are times that you've been an enigma to me, and I've learned a lot about you in this conversation. In some ways, I think I know less about you and our facilitation team than the others. I'm really interested in, how do we leverage your unique skills more? That's what I'm interested in. How do we leverage that? I'm really interested in this discussion you've had about community and your love of community, and how do we get more goodness from that? Because I am interested in community, but I don't know enough about community to really amplify things. And we're in a stage of amplification, right? And so I'd be really interested to know, within the collective intelligence context, how do we leverage this wonderful skill that you've got? Yeah.
Hmm.
And it's interesting. Sometimes I see you being really contained, right? And sometimes I would love to see you less contained. So you're often,
Hmm.
very not reserved, but you're thinking and so forth. And I'd love to see. I don't know. I'm not sure if it's spontaneous or radical or something. Just fucking shake the shit out and go, come on, let's go. What's going on there? Yeah. So that's what's there for me.
Crikey.
You asked for it.
I did. Um, hmm. It's not the first time that I've been described as contained, and entirely true. And I think that that's a lifelong, like, let me out of this thing. And so I don't have an answer to your question, but I'm just going to work it out as I'm talking. So there's something about feeling like I love the facilitation I do for CQ, but it feels like a box too small.
Right.
I go to the fungus meetings because I'm fascinated by what will turn up.
Yep.
And I find myself in those meetings being able to spontaneously make contributions that it's a context for me to be able to offer freely and liberally and hopefully generously. And I guess what I would hope is that some of those threads that go into that are able to be picked up, because I've got time and energy. I totally believe that CQ is grown-up adult development, which has the power to really shape how Aotearoa shows up in the globe, but Aotearoa to start with. So it's about I guess finding a place where I can settle to offer more of what there is, and sometimes the boxes I find myself in are they just feel a bit too small. I love the facilitation, and in the facilitation places, I really enjoy it. And then I think, but CQ as a business could do with this kind of work.
And look, what's emerging and on the horizon is the relaunch of the impact teams, of the Hatcher teams that have been developing, of the online village, and looking at how do we leverage the skills, the trust, and this wonderful array of people from across the country from all these different backgrounds. And so, okay, so that would. Okay.
So some of it, if I'm thinking again, is it's like how can I help support CQ, like the people in CQ, including you and the team, to walk the talk, to apply the stuff that we totally believe in about the members, and to do that really actively. Like, how could I be an active part of that core team so that we as CQ get to be active and curious and taking wise, timely action? And I see that CQ's doing that, and I see that sometimes it probably doesn't examine itself enough to release itself. And that's where my skill is.
Interesting. And so, immediately I'm going, I thought we did, and we've done that through the impact team, but maybe not enough on a regular basis. Or regular practice.
It's the practice, and the practice is becoming rituals. So the thing that I'm often working with organisations around, which I'd love to do with CQ, is what are those liberating practices that they could sound really simple, like it could be just how you start and finish a meeting and how you hold a thread through the meeting. So how do we literally, how do you do meetings in a way that liberates rather than constrains? And that's something that I'm doing a lot of work on in other businesses. And how could I do that kind of work with CQ and its businesses so that there are practices, rituals, processes that become that offer that hospitality and that invitation to the internal people in CQ, because I think that would, I find that liberating. I think CQ would.
Okay. Okay, that's something to explore, and I hadn't. That's landed, and I know when something's landed, I go, oh yep, I'm getting that, and I think, and it's like one of those things that I'm not aware that we're not doing it because we have check-ins and the team's working really well, but that doesn't mean to say we can't lift our game either.
And what I see, I don't think CQ would be who it is now without doing those things. And it's what I said before, we don't see the water we're swimming in, so it's hard for you as so intimately connected to CQ to see that. It's impossible for you to see it.
Yep.
And it's impossible, it's impossible to be seen entirely from the inside. It's kind of like multiple ways of seeing and then gathering that information needed.
And Lisa, it's interesting because this is the question supposed to be back at you, but it's turned around to me again. Very clever. You took us through that exercise recently, that and identifying different layers that we operate at, and I found that really stimulating because it gave me an indication of where I could head to, right? And so I'm inspired to move into this alchemist role. I don't know what to do to get there. I think I know what to do, right? And so maybe that's something that we can explore more with that.
Yeah, and, I found doing that, offering that practice to the team really fascinating. And it's helping people who work together to understand their own, we call it action logics, but it's kind of like how it is that we grow over time and the layers of our capacity that we add over time that enables us to be lots more nuanced, lots more long-term, lots more able to see a bigger system, and lots more able to hold that lightly. And the thing that I find really interesting is that there's layers of action logics that humans develop and stages that we go through, but also really fascinatingly there's stages of development that organisations go through that run in parallel to that. And there's real magic that happens when when organisations see where they are tracking in much the same way that you're fascinated by what might it take for you to continue to grow and develop to whatever stage. Organisations can be asking that question of themselves, obviously influenced by the people in that organisation, but also by their stakeholders and by their context. And so being able to get an idea of that. And, one of the patterns, for example, is centralisation, decentralisation, centralisation, decentralisation over a period of time and as the organisation grows. And those are some of the words that I hear you saying about CQ. And it would be really interesting to see where the organisation's at in that life trajectory and to sit that alongside where the people are in their life trajectory. And I think that could just unlock some of the magic.
Yeah, because when you're saying that, I'm sitting here going, oh yeah, are we just using words at the moment? And I have a funny feeling we're just using the words at the moment. It's definitely an aspiration to become decentralised. We've started off very centralised, and I think that was the right thing to do to get it to this point. And I think it serves a really good function. Dictators get an awful lot done, and it's been a dictatorship, and now that dictatorship is changing. And the process we've just been through with all this new work, new systems, rebrand, the whole piece has been. I haven't been in the middle of that.
Which is awesome.
I've had influence from at the beginning, but then left it to people who are way more skilled and capable to do that. And I got a glance of that yesterday. I felt really emotional seeing all this work coming together and going, oh, this is, I felt incredibly honoured by it and really excited and really liberated that I didn't have to do it all. And that's not decentralisation, but I think it's an indicator that it's possible.
Yeah. Yeah. And my question would be, like, decentralisation is it's not a word that when you say it excites me anyway. But it's like, so why? What's the bigger purpose? And if decentralisation, is a structural mechanism to get there, fabulous.
Yeah.
But why? Is it about having people be free to act on their intuition, or free to make decisions collectively? Or is it about, I don't know, what is the bigger reason? So that's the magnetising piece. And then the structure of the organisation follows that. It doesn't lead it.
So the thing that gets me excited is the concept of a village where araha and mana and trust are exhibited, where people do less but do it really well. And they do what they say they're going to do. And I see, and so that really excites me. And then how do we help each other create a world that we can thrive in? That excites me.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that that's the thing I want to dedicate the rest of my life to.
Yeah.
And I think we've got the foundation to build on that. And that's the collective intelligence 2.0 and beyond. And yeah, that's me. That's what I want to do.
Yeah. And that's what excites me as well. And my question is, who are we becoming to make that possible? And who is the organisation becoming that also makes that possible?
That's another podcast, Lisa.
Yep.
Thank you for this conversation.
Pleasure.
I was going to drop the cheese making into here, Lisa, but it's a bit of a wild card. But you and G have recently become cheese makers. Yeah.
Holy shit, we make great cheese, and I think it's hilarious, Harv. You've heard me saying this forever. And yesterday you asked me where I get the milk from. It's like, we make nut cheese. The business is called High Culture. So we culture the nuts, we blend them up. We make the most extraordinary plant-based cashew cheese. And we're about to get our, a big stamp from the government saying that we can do that commercially. We have a little social, I call it a social enterprise, because actually for us it's hugely social, because we go around and delivering the cheese, and we love it when people, go to a barbecue or something or a picnic, and eventually they end up talking about our cheese. So we're about to go huge on Waiheke.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
Yeah, and look, I'd been following, I knew that you were making cheese, but just hadn't sort of followed it enough, and, going, well, where do you get the milk from to make the cheese? Going, oh, duh. And then we get home and Kate knew all about it, not all about it, but
yeah,
she was onto it. I'm still catching up, yeah. So that you get the big tick soon from
Yep.
the government,
Yep.
and then you are a fully commercial enterprise, and this is cheese that you can only get on Waiheke Island.
At the moment, you can only get it on Waiheke Island.
Yeah.
Yep. And who knows what happens next. The entrepreneur in me is excited about what's next, but let's just saturate the Waiheke market first and see what happens.
Lisa, thank you for your time. Have a wonderful day today facilitating over in Wanganui.
Thanks, Harv.
And thank you for being such an awesome facilitator with us. I really appreciate and love your work and love working with you. And let's do more of it.
Let's.
Thanks for listening in. We're Collective Intelligence, a one-of-a-kind people ecosystem that takes inspiration from Mother Nature. To find out how we reimagine leadership development, visit our website www.collectiveintelligence.co.nz.